welcome you on into another episode of the Big Time Sports Podcast Show. Mitch Spinell alongside Mitchell Balla here to give you the latest of what's going on in the sporting world. Mitch, I didn't wear rivalry colors this week.
You done messed up.
We were talking before the show. He wore his Jackson colors for Jackson Hoover this week. I'm wearing black for the orange and black of Strasburg Franklin High School, but I forgot the orange. Now,
Did you just say orange and black?
Yeah.
No, that color's outlawed. I'm glad you didn't wear your
Oh, I was wondering where you were going with that. I'm like,
Yeah,
who do you have the right to give ownership
Orange
of
and
what?
black is not a good color when they play a team in purple.
It is when you're playing a team that's black and muted gold.
You're
No.
not playing one of those teams. I'm just saying there happens to be a team that's orange and black that's playing a team with purple and gold.
That's a different team. First of all, it's not even the team that everybody's been talking about in orange and black, but we'll get to them in a second as well, because we want to get into this whole conversation for you guys for this episode, which is the 111th. I checked it yesterday. We're on it today. We have 3 games to cover on this week. We have, of course, the Indian Valley Claymont game coming tonight, actually. The day we're recording, it'll be Thursday night that you'll be seeing the Braves take on the Mustangs on Big Time Sports. Check our website, bigtimesportsohio.com/schedule for the showtime and local listings. Obviously, if you're in the Tuscarawas or Stark area, depends on where you are, or it could be WIVMTV.com or the LBN app. Friday, we mentioned it, Jackson at Hoover against the Vikings. That game will be a good one there. And then Dover versus New Philadelphia, the granddaddy of Ohio high school football rivalries, except for one maybe. I had to get that disclaimer in there because you gave me a look. You gave me a look.
I was going to say.
You gave me a look, but it's the 120th matchup between the two squads. This will be the big one here coming up in a little over 24 hours. So there you go. All right, so let's talk about these sort of games, Mitch. Let's start off with the big one that everyone's been talking about. Kind of got thrown for a monkey wrench last week when Glen Oak decided to kind of upstage McKinley's season potentially by keeping them from an outright win of the Federal League title. So now McKinley doesn't get a break in Week 10. They have to go up against a Massillon team that has looked dominant against mostly out-of-area competition this year. You know, a lot of people are taking the bets on Massillon winning again, finishing the season unbeaten, and going into the playoffs strong. Where do you see McKinley standing in this? Like, what do they have to do specifically in order to stay competitive with the Tigers Saturday?
They're going to have to do a lot of hoping.
I mean, more. I would think, like, on the field stuff, more than that, man.
They're going to have the best game plan out of any team that Massillon has faced so far this year in terms of how to stop DeJuan Owens. Because nobody stopped him except for the OHSAA for one game, and it still didn't matter. He is as good as advertised. He is, top 2 quarterback in Stark County right now. I'll say that. I want to make sure I give Poochie Snyder the respect he deserves as well from Canton South, another undefeated team in the area. When you look at McKinley and some of the games they played recently, we go back to the game against Jackson. Sloppy win. Coach Hall after the game said they were more lucky than good. Mm-hmm. And last week against Glen Oak, 3 points. That's it.
3 points.
This is a Massillon defense that has been stout for the most part all year. This is also an offense that when DeJuan Owens has been back there and having the ability to run and throw the ball, nobody stopped him. I just haven't seen anything from McKinley that tells me they can stop them, Mitch. I have not seen one thing this year that has told me McKinley is capable of stopping Massillon. Rivalry game or not. Yeah, they're going to get up for it. Yeah, it's at Tom Benson Hall of Fame Stadium. I don't see any way how this does not continue to go down the path it's gone with Massillon winning again for whatever the number of year is in a row, because it's been all Massillon for the past number of years.
I mean, unfortunately for McKinley's sake, it has been all Massillon. But if you're going into this matchup, I think the Bulldogs will definitely have to focus on the running game. Against the Massillon defense that has been very solid all year, they've averaged allowing less than 10 points per game against a lot of good schools. This is going to be one where when you look at the kind of tailbacks that McKinley has been able to boast for this entire year. You have guys like Nino Hill, who have been very dominant so far this year. You have guys like Thomas, who have been able to be productive for the team. I mean, those guys can really throw Massillon for a loop if they're on it in that game. And Keaton Road, I mean, say what you want about him. When you match him up with somebody like DeJuan Owens, the resume doesn't like stack up as much, but Rhoda has had a few games in here where he's been able to put up the points for McKinley. He's among the top scorers on the team, leading with about 1,700 passing yards and 13 touchdowns, 3 more on the ground, and then just under 500 rushing yards. So, and those are good numbers. But when you go over against to somebody like Owens, He's the leading rusher for Massillon so far this year. He's got almost 800 yards. He has the 10 touchdowns, not to mention almost 800 yards passing and 10 touchdowns in the air. So it's a very balanced attack from him alone. But even with that, I mean, we got to talk about some of the guys that Massillon's been able to boast for this entire year. I mean, their defense especially. We mentioned if McKinley can get the run game going, it could be a very difficult game for Massillon, but that defense otherwise has been pretty stout the entire year.
We literally saw a team jump out 14-0 against a defense that people thought was going to be, one of these top defenses. And you're sitting there in the first quarter thinking, okay, maybe Massillon isn't this good. And then they flipped a switch. And it took them a little bit, right? You're playing a team from out of state in Georgia week 1. So, yeah, the film and everything is a little different. They play different styles. But McKinley is going to have to hope the offensive line plays their best game of the year. They create holes for Nino Hill and Keaton Road to scramble. And McKinley is going to have to control the clock. That is the only way possible, Mitch. I can see the McKinley Bulldogs having a chance tomorrow. And even if they control the clock, can the McKinley defense stop Massillon? I don't know if they can. Nobody's been able to stop Massillon for the most part this year. Definitely not in the loss column.
Nah, that's where it's going to be really tricky because going through all the names here, we mentioned guys for McKinley, like Dante McClellan, who has been a very good player for them this year. Kayvon McNeil has 13 tackles for loss, 9 sacks for McKinley this year. But even again with that, Massillon's got a tough defense that can work wonders against this McKinley squad. And both teams are good, but these are two good teams going into the final week of the season. It's not like one team's having a huge off year, but yeah, it's going to be a test for Canton McKinley this week. Now, going over to the other matchups here in the area, I mean, we mentioned the game that we will be covering Friday night. It's going to be Jackson up against Hoover. I mean, Jackson was able to get the win last week, and then, Hoover has been kind of here and there. They've lost 4 out of their last 5 games, but I'm curious as to see if the Vikings, like where their standing might be if they were to say lose to Jackson. Jackson's pretty much into the Division I, Region 1 playoffs. They're currently 9th in the standings, I believe. They could even get as high as 6 if they were to win Friday. The Vikings are 14th, and under the current rule, I believe it's 16 teams get into the playoffs this year. That's going to be tricky for Hoover if they ended up losing. It's obviously based on quality of loss as well, right, because they want to get the computer votes as well. I mean, Hoover, how does Hoover break out of this funk that they've been in? We mentioned those 4 out of 5 losses.
Well, it all starts with Carson Derlin. And if he's available to play or if he is out for an extended period of time, because now you're talking about not only having to throw somebody else in there instead of your Division I recruit, but this late in the season with minimal reps for that backup quarterback. That's a tough spot. I don't care what team you are. I don't care how good you are or how talented you are. That's a very tough spot. You look at somebody like Lucas Eckerman for Jackson. It was week 7 or 8 last year. He got thrown into the fire.
Yep.
And then, he just completed what was really his first full season of being a starting quarterback for Jackson. And he did very well, but at the same time, it's just, if Hoover doesn't have Derlin, I think it makes them very one-dimensional. Now, this is a team, though, Mitch, that still put up 34 points last week and lost. So, at the same time, the offense looks like it's capable, but they gave up 41 points to Green, who's also without their starting quarterback. So what does that say about the defense as well? Now, listen, it is a rivalry game. Everything's off the table, or everything's on the table, whichever one you want to say. Either way. I've seen it before many times. When I was in high school, Jackson can have the better team. Hoover wins. Hoover had the better team. Jackson wins. It is literally the epitome of a rivalry game. It does not matter what the records are. These two teams do not like each other. The communities for one night apart do not like each other. It's the battle of the railroad, and it's going to be a game. And you best believe that the two coaches know it too, as they're both alumni from those schools. So you want to talk about having that rivalry ingrained in you. Jay Rohr knows what he's doing. Coach Baum knows what he's doing. They know how important this game is. Hoover got it done at Jackson last year. Can Jackson go play the spoiler over at Hoover?
I was going to say, Hoover's won 3 straight and 4 out of the last 5 against the Polar Bears. I didn't know this one. 64-28 all time against you guys. Sorry. But Baum did expect Derlin to be back at quarterback this week after missing last week with the hamstring. So Brower will be moved back to wide receiver after taking quarterback duties last week. I mean, that's a good combination that if they can take advantage of the Jackson secondary, then that could put Hoover in a good scoring spot for the next couple for at least the first few quarters. Also, Hoover's special teams need to step up after their performance last week. They gave up 2 kickoff returns for touchdowns against Perry, and that was a key difference in the 41-34 loss that they sustained.
Jackson's a team that on special teams they can make plays happen.
Sure.
I mean, you've seen Kyle Benson do it, Anthony Fuline sometimes back there in kick return. There's plenty of other players on that special teams unit that has made plays. So Hoover better be locked in and ready to go. But it's hard to imagine either of these teams won't be locked in and ready to go, knowing what's at stake.
For sure. Now, we also have the big rivalry game on Friday night. One of the granddaddies, I should say, not the granddaddy, but one of them is Dover and New Philadelphia. That game to be taking place at Crater Stadium. Dave Sheets and I will be on call for that game, as well as Ron Hurst. This will be an interesting one because New Philadelphia and Dover are coming in at kind of different points from last week. New Philadelphia, we saw last week, had that heartbreaking loss at the end to West Holmes, 9-8. Not the highest scoring game, but the New Philadelphia defense arguably had its best performance of the season. They will need to do the same against a Dover team that has been playing very well heading into the final few weeks of the season. These are 2 teams, by the way, that are both around the middle part of the top 15. So a win for each would pretty much solidify them a chance for the playoffs. Now, a loss, it kind of depends on what happens on the field and what happens elsewhere Friday night. This is going to be an interesting one. New Philadelphia has, as I mentioned before, had some very good defensive outings this year. Has kind of at times struggled to put points on the board against non-OCC opponents. But if you can get Keaton Fossil going in the first half, if you can have Etney Richardson have a little more production like he had at the end tail of last week's game, that could do wonders for New Philadelphia. Now, Dover's had a few good wins this year, and they're going to have a lot of guys who are going to be on that field Friday night. But I could go either way for me, honestly. This is one where I can't really make a decision as of now of who. If you were to ask me who I predict to win, I couldn't tell you right now. This is how even the 2 teams are. And, it's going to be interesting to see which team, it seems like which team will probably be boasting playoff aspirations after Friday night.
So which team do you predict to win?
I don't know. Dover has the home field advantage. Dover has been very good. Crater Stadium is one of the harder places to win in Tuscarawas County. It's one of the longtime stadiums here, and most times when you go to Dover, like the Crimson Tornadoes are coming out with that victory, but it's tricky. Even in an off year, they get a lot of victories at home. So I don't really know for sure. I will have a preview out here pretty soon within the next 24 hours. So yeah, I'm very excited to see all these rivalry games, including the ones for our schools you mentioned, Jackson and Hoover, Strasburg and Central. I mean Strasburg and Central haven't had the greatest of seasons between the 2 of them, but they're doing what they can. They're working around it. I mean, I don't know. This is what happens when you don't go to a school where the football program was consistent, is the term I'm going to use. Well, they were consistent at one thing, and I'm not going to say what thing that was. Anyway, every one of those kids could probably still beat me up. We're going to move on.
I was waiting for it.
Hey, Stark County, it's your friends from the local Board of Mental Health and Addiction Recovery, and we have a challenge for you. We're asking you to create a new habit and check in on someone every day. Nothing fancy, just a simple text, phone call, or note on social media to ask someone how they're doing. You don't have to be a professional, you just have to ask and then listen. Are you someone who could use a check-in? Text 4HOPE to 741-741 anytime, day or night, or dial 988. Brought to you by Stark County Mental Health and Addiction Recovery.
Wendy's without the Wendy's app is like Nugs without the sauce. Or a Frosty without the fries. Or a hamburger without the fresh beef. No! Level up. Get the app to order ahead, order delivery, earn free food, and get app-exclusive offers. One app, all the Wendy's.
Offer for a limited time at participating Wendy's. Terms apply. App registration required. Fresh beef available in the contiguous U.S., Alaska, and Canada.
You deserve the best. And at Ferris Chevrolet, Buick, Cadillac, Toyota, that's what you get. We consider you the customer, to be part of our family. Anybody can make promises, but when you visit Ferris, you get the Ferris deal from a Ferris wheel. So if you're looking for a car, truck, or van, think Ferris.
Think Ferris.
Where you matter.
You matter. Everyone plays a part. We all have a role. Each of us can make a difference. You do matter, and the best way to have a positive impact is to pay it forward. With each of us helping one another to cope, feel better, and know that we belong. Pass on the positivity today. Tell someone else they matter too. Alt Care.
Alt Care, Alt Care. Where you matter.
You invest a lot in your home and vehicle purchases. Van Nostrand Young and Associates want you to feel secure should anything happen to those investments. We partnered with providers like Grange Insurance and other industry leaders to be sure you're presented with the most complete coverage to fit your needs. Because we're not only here to protect the items you invest in, we're here to protect your future as well.
Call Van Nostrand Young Insurance in North Canton at 330-497-1867.
Happy Sardiversary with Sarda rider Anthony. We're celebrating 25 years with our valued riders.
And I absolutely enjoy riding the buses. I get to know a few of the drivers, very respectful, very professional. Just an all-around about good experience. It helps people get to where they're going, disabled, veterans, or people going to work.
Thanks to all our riders as we celebrate Sarda 25 at Sarda.
We're going to move on to something that we wanted to talk about. I mean, we could do anything right now. We could go to the NFL. We can go to the baseball playoffs. I mean, we could go to, I mean, we wanted to save college for last, but what do you want to go to right now? Choose your poison. Pick poison.
Let's talk about them Browns.
All right, let's do that. I mean, there's really not much coming off of last Tuesday's episode, which you guys can look at now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. We put up that huge opening. By the way, we got copyright struck, not by the usual suspect, but by the National Football League themselves, because I used too much of the clip of the highlights from that game. I mean, like I get
Thank
it,
you, Roger.
I get it. Oh, by the way, I just signed an extension through 2027. Did you see that?
Really, Roger? You couldn't just let one slide for the boys?
It was personal.
Really?
It was personal for him.
It was personal.
It was personal.
It's personal now.
I mean, I used a good. Admittedly, I used a good chunk of Kevin Stefanski's post game press, and there's literally a big Ticketmaster thing on the screen because that's what the sponsor was for the video. Anyway,
they're not a sponsor with us though. But
no,
if you want to be a sponsor with us, you could be.
There you go. But yeah, I mean, the Browns, they play Indianapolis this week. They're going to be, Indianapolis has officially ruled Anthony Richardson out for the season, but
Damn.
it's still, you didn't know that?
I was hoping that like they were just, we think he could be out for the season.
It's expected.
They get a second opinion. It's like, oh no, he's
going to have surgery and it's expected. Yeah. But Gardner Minshew's going to be in. I mean, Indianapolis has not been amazing this year. They just lost to Jacksonville, who plays tonight, but
they suck too.
That's the thing. Does Indianapolis suck? I don't know.
No, Jacksonville.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yeah. But, like, Indianapolis this year is not like a team that is flat out awful. They're not like the Cardinals. They're not like the Patriots. But I don't know. And because we're Browns fans, we always anticipate what's going to go wrong. Some people are expecting a letdown after last week's performance against San Francisco. I expect them to at least still be able to. I expect them to at least put up a not similar performance, but at least the same level of effort the defense will put up against Indianapolis. This isn't going to be a game where I think they like take a rest and give up like 35 points. But at the same time, you're probably not going to have Deshaun Watson back. I believe we saw him talk yesterday regarding his injury prowess, saying that the team is pretty much still on the same page about his recovery, and really at this point it's week to week at this point. We are on a day-to-day, week-to-week, hour-to-hour basis of where Deshaun Watson's injury stands. And it's frustrating because you want to know if your number one guy can go play, but at the same time we don't want him to rush back and do something that, could jeopardize the rest of his season and maybe onward. So I don't know. Like, what do you have any takes on like this whole rigmarole of Deshaun Watson may be able to play, may not be able to play? We've kind of talked about this already.
All right, at this point, I just don't know. Like, it's just I don't want to speak because it's not my body. I don't know what it feels like, what he's going through, what exactly the injury is, which I feel like we're starting to get an idea what it is, but we don't truly know if it's actually the rotator cuff or this or that or
he
whatever.
said it was a rotator cuff issue yesterday, yeah.
But, I mean, why are we just finding out about it was the rotator cuff now? But the past few weeks, it's just been lingering. We don't know yet. You know, Stefanski expects him to play. He doesn't play. I don't know. It's frustrating. It is. I'd really like to know what it looks when he throws the ball right now. Like, does he not have the velocity on it? Does he not have the touch? Is he just scared to get hurt if something's sore? Like, I don't know. And so that's why I'll leave it at that. The Browns should win this game Sunday. If they lose to Gardner Minshew, who is a poor man's, not even just a poor man's, he's an extremely poor man's Baker Mayfield. When somebody said poor man's Baker Mayfield. But he's like, that's still offensive to Baker, I think. Like, he's got to be like, we'll go with basically Mac Jones.
Oh, that's
just with a headband and long hair.
That's a bold.
So if this
comparison.
defense can't stop him, then that says all I need to know about the defense.
Well,
and in terms of a letdown performance, you just stopped the 49ers.
Yeah.
I don't care if CMC and Debo missed half the game.
Right.
You just stopped a team that hadn't lost since week 7 of the regular season last year. You just stopped a team that had scored 30-plus points in every single game they played so far this year. You can't stop Gardner Minshew and Zach Moss. I'm not even going to talk about Jonathan Taylor. Because he's not even getting carries. Zach Moss is apparently just the greatest thing of all time. And all he needed was Jonathan Taylor to get signed for him to start proving himself. Shame on Buffalo for letting him go. Buffalo does not know how to treat running backs whatsoever. They think their quarterback's a running back, which is only going to screw them over here in a few years because he's going to take hit after hit after hit like Cam Newton. Either way, I'm off tangent here. If the Browns lose the Colts, then the season's over.
Okay, so you're jumping back on the panic train if the Browns lose and go back to 3-3, even though we talked about some of these upcoming matchups they're going to have, particularly against NFC West opponents that are extremely winnable. Now,
Well, Kevin Stefanski is also 7-0 versus AFC South opponents. So that's why I feel confident they're going to win this game. But I'm saying, unless the reason we lose is P.J. Walker throws 3 interceptions that get returned for touchdowns, or the special teams unit gives up punt return, kick return touchdowns, there's no reason this team should even come close to losing the Indianapolis Colts. This is also in Indianapolis. There's going to be a lot of Browns fans there. I can promise you
I've heard that.
There's going to be there's a bunch of Browns backers bars in Indianapolis. It's a 4-hour drive from here. It's not that far of a drive. I mean, you drive 2 hours to Pittsburgh. What's the difference driving to Indianapolis for a 1:00 game?
Fair.
I think that everything would have to go wrong for the Browns to lose this game. And everything would have to go right for Indianapolis. And that's why it would be a letdown, because I just don't see, unless this team is a team that has to have bulletin board material, because we saw the Browns post this past week, posting all the people that picked the 49ers to win, posting what Dante Whitner said, posting what, was it Jimmy Johnson or
somebody on Fox NFL
what
Sunday,
they said about the 49ers and Browns.
what the Big Time Sports Podcast show said about them the week before.
Yeah. Well, you know what, Browns? You suck. Boom. Win guaranteed.
Nobody's going to take that clip out of context. That 1 second clip of you saying they suck.
You guys suck, and you need to prove it. You can win 2 games in
Stop.
a row.
Stop.
And if you don't,
Stop it.
I would probably still be a sick person to watch you every week.
Yeah,
unless you ruin my day.
you're a sadist. We all know this. Is that the right term? I don't know.
I don't know. Either way, at the Colts, at the Seahawks, and you come home, you play the Cardinals. Then you go to Baltimore, which I'm just going to tell you right now, that game's terrifying to me.
In Baltimore?
In Baltimore,
Yeah.
I do truly believe, call me crazy, this is going to be a hot take of the week. This might be a clip that you're probably going to put out. I do believe that Joe Woods was only good for 2 games a year, and it was against the Baltimore Ravens. he always somehow schemes something up to be able to stop Baltimore or limit their offense. when you go back and look at those games. There probably is like one anomaly in there where Baltimore just kicked the shit out of us.
Mm-hmm.
But that game scares me. If I'm looking ahead, the Seahawks will be interesting. Cardinals, that if this team loses at home to Josh Dobbs,
yeah, it'd be rough.
Jimmy Haslam may fire Andrew Berry on the spot.
Might. Just might.
The Ravens are scary, but then you come home, the Steelers don't scare me. We know we should have won that game. I mean, we're not going to get back into that one. That still triggers me. Then you go to Denver. If you lose to Sean Payton, you should probably be fired. Then you go to LA.
Who'd have thought 3 years ago if you just said that would have been crazy, but yeah.
Well, we beat Sean Payton when he was in New Orleans before.
He did, yeah.
Then you go to LA, the Rams. That one, toss-up, I think. It just depends how they're playing, right? Then you come home against Jacksonville, who I think is one of the most overrated teams in the NFL still. And then you play the Bears. If the Cleveland Browns are not 6-3 or better in that span, with the little asterisk next to it that Deshaun Watson plays in 7 of those 9. So I'm giving Deshaun another 2 weeks, right? I'm saying maybe he comes back against the Cardinals, okay? Because he's uncommittal on the timetable for his return. We don't know. He could start Sunday. He could start next week. He could not be back at all. I'm saying right now as I do this, I have Deshaun Watson. I pictured in my head, I have Deshaun Watson starting at least 7 of the next 9 games.
Okay, so you have him at 9-5 on the season then. If you say they were going to 6-3 during that stretch.
They would be 9-5 then?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I don't know. I think even if they were to go 5-4 during that run, I'd be okay with that. I mean, there are some teams in there that you definitely should get wins against, depending on the circumstances, because Arizona is definitely going to put up a fight. Josh Dobbs is going to put up a fight against a team that decided to just get rid of him for a 5th-round pick. Whether or not that was the right move, we don't know.
He could be.
He doesn't have. I know he's not like the type of the starting quarterback that can It's not like a Baker Mayfield where for some reason that man just thrives on low expectations and everybody doubting him.
Yeah.
Which we didn't last week. We're not going to get into that. But I don't see even Dobbs being that comparable to even somebody like Baker, which Baker is even on his own thing.
I think we know the type of person Josh Dobbs is.
Yeah.
We know the type of person Baker was, right? And I don't think there's anything wrong with being the way they are. I think Dobbs, if anything, should be more thankful because he would have been backup quarterback here. You know what I mean? Where now he's the starting quarterback in Arizona. True. And although his biggest issue, if you've watched anything recently, was they didn't have his jersey in the team shop. Now they have his jersey in the team shop. Now he can buy it and send it to his family and friends.
Then you see that Kyler Murray is back practicing this week. So I don't think he's going to be playing within the next 2 weeks.
I think this is a very fascinating topic, and I think this can kind of lead us into the next one that we also mentioned a little bit about. If I'm the Arizona Cardinals, you're 1-5.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to win another game.
It depends on what you want.
Your quarterback cannot be Kyler Murray moving forward. It cannot.
Especially coming off an injury like that, you don't want to risk it again.
Yeah, especially on a guy who's mobile, who wants to run, right? Typically, once these guys get hurt, I mean, Mitch, it even caught up to Cam Newton. Cam Newton was an anomaly, I think, because you look at him and Lamar Jackson, and Cam Newton was so big.
Yeah.
He was a big guy. He could take the hits, and that's why I'm worried, Josh Allen, if he doesn't start getting down a little bit more, could the same thing happen to him? But Kyler Murray cannot be the quarterback moving forward for the Arizona Cardinals.
Overall,
no.
Wow,
no,
okay.
He's not good. He should have stuck with baseball. He should have gone to the A's. He'd probably already be in the majors by now. But, hey, you chase the bag. It's fine.
Ah, okay.
He was a phenomenal athlete at Oklahoma, phenomenal baseball player. It's not too late. Brandon Weeden made his NFL debut at the age of 28, so maybe Kyler Murray can make his MLB debut at the age of 28.
For the Vegas A's. Is he still under contract with them?
I don't know. I don't know. I've looked that up. Since he got drafted in another league. Maybe.
Either way.
Maybe. But it's all out for Caleb Williams. And the real question now is after we've heard the rumors come out, first off, is it even possible for that to happen?
Right.
Secondly, what team would be willing to do it?
And it is now time for another segment of Fuel, Move, Recover, featuring Dr. Michele Iono, physical therapist and president of Advancing Athletics. Doc, and thank you so much for taking the time again this week.
Appreciate it, Mitch.
So as we go into this segment, as we arrive at postseason play for the fall season, being properly warmed up and ready to compete couldn't be more important. As the season is changing, of course, we're going to a bit colder weather now, so it's obviously important for kids to stay nimble, stay ready. Many warm-ups are structured activities led by coaches and captions usually. And why do you think this is important to discuss, first of all, at all? And second of all, is it particularly important right now?
Yeah, I think, there's a few different things. The first, as always, before we jump into this, just to remind everybody, this is not medical advice. And we're speaking generally and using maybe specific examples to kind of provide evidence for, the topic. And otherwise, if you need specific help for yourself or an athlete or a child, make sure to reach out to a PT, me, the athletic trainer, or a medical doctor. Now, with that being said, the thing is that athletes, you can't afford to not be ready, as soon as the clock starts. And, coaches like to say that that's always important, right? But now it really counts, because now it's win or go home. So, you can't rely on the other team making mistakes as much for you to make a comeback, let's say. And you don't have another game later this week if you lose in order to figure it out. So I think that that's one thing that kind of heightens the importance of being ready. The other things are that, first, these are individuals that are developing their roles on the team and their skills at the same time as they're developing their bodies and minds. So, the role that maybe you had going into the year is different than it is now at the end. My sophomore year playing football in high school, I was the starting nose tackle. And because we had so many injuries, I went from nose tackle to the weak side defensive tackle to strong side defensive tackle to weak side end, strong side end, weak side linebacker. And then by the end of the season, I was playing the strong side linebacker. So that's just a good example of how the role that I had at the end of the year changed relative to what it was at the beginning of the year. Plus, I was only 16, so I was developing and everything else like that. So the warm-ups, the things you may need to do or feel you need to do are different, are likely different now than what they were before. And maybe you're new to the sport or whatnot. By then, my 10th grade year, I'd already been playing football for 6 seasons. So although I was developing, I kind of understood, at least, from the perspective of 16-year-old, football. And then the final thing is as we've talked numerous times, and what always comes back to mind for me is injuries, bumps and bruises. And so you might need a little more time with a certain area to make sure that hamstring injury you've been fighting doesn't, kind of rear its ugly head at the most important time of the season.
So going into this particular topic, I wanted to start by focusing in on a few activities that you can do to get ready for these sorts of games. Obviously, there are a number of practices we can go over. There are a number of outside factors that can go into this sort of procedure. First of all, the sort of things that we've been seeing that are really popular as of the last few years are things that people can purchase or get their hands on in order to get themselves ready for games, such as foam rollers, massage guns, any sort of form of outside help to get you ready for not just games, but any particular form of physical activity. What are your takes on those sort of factors?
These things have become really popular. Things like foam rollers and massage guns and stuff like that. You see people carrying them around in the gym, at practice, on the sidelines and whatnot. And they can be really useful tools. I guess the one thing that I just would like to reiterate first is that this is not meant to replace the warm-ups that, you do with your team or, that's led by your captains and whatnot. Now, that doesn't mean that they're the best, but I believe strongly in, incorporating individual techniques, but also team dynamics and how important that is. So, potentially you could have a conversation with your coaches or captains, or, if you are one of those, to hey, can we incorporate some things, but don't think that just doing a little bit of foam rolling or using a massage gun is all you need to get yourself ready. And that really kind of applies to all the different movements, warm-ups that we're kind of talking about that potentially could be incorporated and already are being incorporated into team activities, or maybe done in addition to either before, during, or after you're doing your team activities. Now, the thing is that sports like life includes a variety of repetitive actions and motions. Every week we record this podcast, we're sitting in our same offices, faced the same way, and so we're using the exact same muscles to be in this position. Now, this segment of our show is not that long, but just amplify this to all the things we do in our lives where we're always doing these same kind of things. So when you do repetitive motions, the same muscles that allow you to do those motions are getting tension in them all the time, even if they're low grade activities. So that's why these, things like, massage guns, or really they're actually called percussion guns because they just go up and down almost like a jackhammer works. So the actual word is percussion gun, but a lot of them are massage guns. Theraguns is a brand people have heard of. And foam rollers, those foam cores that you see, sometimes they're hollow, sometimes they're colored, oftentimes they're black and made of styrofoam. And the thing is that, when you do these repetitive motions, like for example, right now, my shoulders are turned more to my left and my head is turned more to the right so that my mouth is close to the microphone. That means the right side of my neck is in a more shortened or stiffened position, and the left side of my neck is in a more lengthened position. So now I could try and get myself more square. Okay, now I'm more square, and that's just not as comfortable for me. So I might want to work out some of those muscles on either side because they're in these constant positions all the time. And a lot of times people will come to me and they will feel like I feel like my warm-up doesn't help. I feel like I'm still not ready. And this can oftentimes be that effect because our brain and our nervous system turns on our muscles. And so they're the ones that, like on the left side of my neck, as I'm explaining, are trying to pull just a little bit so my head can snap back at any point in time that I ask it to. While on the right side, those muscles are staying fired on constantly all the time. So by kind of working some of those muscles, you can kind of stiff parts or the kind of lumpy parts. Sometimes we call those trigger points that you might feel. And I can do neck stretches and whatever, but I still have that inconsistent tension between the two sides. This makes me think kind of like when it's almost like quieting down your nervous system, doing this, these techniques. It's kind of like you hit your arm against your desk or whatever, and you kind of rub it when it hurts. Well, what you're doing is you're quieting down your brain's signals, or the signals that go to your brain, by kind of stimulating your skin. So oftentimes, simply by getting on that foam core and rolling out some of those target muscles, you can kind of feel lighter, looser, more ready to go, just because you're kind of telling your brain, okay, now we're smoothing that out. You don't have to be firing constantly, because it's a feedback loop. The nerves turn on the muscles. The muscles are then activated and send signals back up to your brain, which turns on the muscles more. And it's this constant cycle. So that's what we mean by kind of quieting or dampening this cycle. And that's why this is one of the easiest things. You don't need to, easiest thing to incorporate, because it's not really technique based. It's not that hard to do. Even just, a few rolls back and forth, or, a few seconds with the percussion gun can make a big difference on what you're feeling.
Well, I'd like to continue into that sort of subject, if you don't mind, because I want to get some more insight into the sort of movements that are more crucial for your sort of everyday routine. I mean, in particular, a big part of my routine that I try to get up no matter if I'm being physically active that day or not, is trying to get some stretching in, trying to make sure that my body is, not like just in a rigid setting for most of the hours of the day. What role do you think stretching plays in just a well-rounded warm-up for anybody?
Well, of course, Mitch, you tell us about your warm-up routine, and now I'm about to say that warm-up suck. I mean, your stretching routine, and now I'm about to say how much stretching sucks.
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, what I say to everybody, and what I've said a number of times in my own podcast is, the best activity that you can do is, or that you should do, is the one you will do. And so, if you enjoy it and you have a good routine, you actually do that routine, then I encourage you to continue that. And then maybe we start to just sprinkle in some modest changes that allow you to, kind of feel, potentially make the thing that you're going for even more effective than you feel like it already is. And so with now that I've, kind of let you off the hook, now I'll go on to say, that really stretching, doesn't play much of a role when I'm talking about or helping develop warm-ups. So the big thing is, there's two things. One's physical or anatomical, and the other one's like more of a psychological thing. So there's this thing called opportunity cost. Are you familiar with opportunity cost, Mitch?
Yes.
The concept. Yeah. So for the listeners who don't know, opportunity cost is the concept that by choosing one thing, you're choosing not to do another thing. And so because time is finite, there's only so much time you have, and so it's kind of like, well, I can either, you finish with practice in school, and it's like I could either go home and do my homework, or I can go to the movies, I can go out to dinner with my friends. And so by choosing one, you're by definition, not choosing the other thing, because you just don't have an infinite amount of time. Well, the same thing goes for smaller choices, like what exercises and activities you're going to do before the game. So that 30-minute clock before a football game starts running, and you only have 30 minutes. They're not going to add on. You can't put in another quarter to buy an extra 5 minutes. So the number of things that you can do are limited. And so if we're trying to pick from scratch the best list of things, stretching is not going to be one of them because of that psychological thing. Okay. Because there simply are other things that you can do that are likely to be as, if not more effective than static stretching. Things that people typically think, you bend over and like stretch your hamstrings, or put your arms over your head, or pull it across your body or whatnot. The anatomical thing or physiological thing is that they don't really work that well, at least in the way that we're doing them. So essentially, stretching, what we're trying to do is kind of lengthen this muscle, get it used to lengthening, so then it can kind of snap back and forth over and over again. So you can think of your muscles as like rubber bands, let's say. Okay, so now what makes a rubber band more effective? Like if you were to stretch it and hold it for a really long time and kind of hold it in that pulled position, or does that actually like loosen the rubber band and actually make it more flimsy and eventually stretched out and eventually break? Because I think I might have mentioned this on a previous episode, but it's not the strongest link in the chain that breaks. It's the weakest. So oftentimes what people feel is they feel that sensation of tension and they feel like they have to stretch, but it's not always, because it's not, the best solution is not simply to stretch, and especially in this static position. So, we want to make sure that the muscles that are necessary for the practice or competition or life or whatever are able to spring back and forth and be able to fire both when you want them to and as strong as you want them to. And so there are other ways to kind of get at that point. And then the final thing that I'll say about stretching, which I really don't why I really don't recommend it, is because stretching needs to be held for much longer than most of us do. You need to do stretches on the scale of minutes, not seconds. And a lot of people will hold a stretch for, 10 to 60 seconds. I mean, and that's a long time to hold a stretch. But in order to really get that muscle to change, it needs to be held for, like 1 minute at a time and then repeated, 4 to 6 times. So much so, kind of like this thing about, the nerve, your nervous system and your brain, like firing on these muscles and whatnot, kind of like I said with my neck, and like get my neck to like snap back, and it to be ready. There is a lot of research that now suggests or is pointing to the fact that doing stretches actually makes your muscles less twitchy and less explosive, because you're pulling on these muscles and essentially trying to get it to like quiet down by holding that tension on it. Well, if you're doing that, then actually that makes them fire less quickly. And so there are other activities that you can do to make them fire more quickly. And then the final part of this is that a lot of people aren't actually isolating that stretch the way it's supposed to. So like if I'm gonna like stand and like stretch my quad, so I'm gonna bring my foot up if I'm standing, and I'm gonna grab my shoe, and then I'm gonna pull my shoe to my butt to stretch the muscle on the front side of my leg. Well, the thing is that if I'm not controlling the position of my back, if I allow my back to arch, my butt to stick out, well, I'm not actually stretching that muscle. So you have to have enough abdominal control to hold your pelvis. Imagine, your pelvis as the thing your hips are connected to, that your spine's connected to on the top. Imagine that's like a bowl. And so whenever you go to do that stretch I just explained, that bowl wants to tip forward. So you have to have enough abdominal control to hold that bowl straight up and down and then pull. Also, you also need to make sure you have a good, strong glute contraction when you're doing that kind of stretch, because your glute keeps the femoral head, your hips, a ball and socket joint. And when you just pull on it hard like that and and just kind of relax into it, you're actually pulling that hip, the ball forward into your socket. It's kind of pulling it out of socket. That can lead to like hip pain and kind of reinforce some like bad like joint stuff that we try to avoid. And so you have to have that good abdominal control to keep your pelvis in the correct position, and you have to have a really good glute squeeze in order to keep that ball in the proper position in that ball and socket joint. These are all things that none of us were taught, whenever we started doing these things back in the day. And so a lot of times people aren't actually getting the benefit that they think they're getting from it, because of these kind of factors. And that's why I usually rely on either active or dynamic movements instead of isolated stretches in order to accomplish that goal.
So now that we take my routine in particular, throw it out this window, I want to know about some of the better ways that we can kind of get started. I mean, what particular dynamic movements do you recommend? Are there any alternative movements that you would recommend? Again,
the first thing is that it's not that necessarily stretching is bad. It's just that you might need to, I don't want you to go out the window with it now that I just, kind of crushed your stretching routine. The thing is that being able to feel it where you're supposed to, and for the amount of time you're supposed to feel it, that's the key thing. And so maybe for some of you, or that's being accomplished. But for all the rest of us, and maybe there's only a couple of these movements, a couple of those stretches where you feel that, and the other ones just kind of feel like a waste of time. Well, there are other things that we can rely upon. So first off, of course, the generic answer is it all depends on your sport. So the demands of your sport, and oftentimes your role, how much you're playing, so on and so forth. These are all things that will also contribute to the kind of movements that you want to do. So let's say that you're going to, you want to stretch that muscle in the front of your thigh, like to use that same example. Well, rather than just pulling on it like that, you could do some glute bridges where you lay on your back, get your feet by your butt, and then lift your butt up into the air. So there you can work on that hip control, that pelvis control, keeping your abs active. And then you're actually using your glutes to lift your butt up into the air. And that's actually stretching the front side of your leg. And now, not only when you release that, when you doing the static stretch, the isolated stretch, as soon as you let go of your foot and it drops back down to the ground, you might have decreased the tension a little bit on the front, but what's going to keep it from just stiffening up again? Nothing in this case, because we didn't turn on anything to like get it to stay that way. It's kind of like if my bicep is like really stiff, to turn on your bicep, as most people appreciate, you straighten your elbow and then you bring your elbow up to your shoulder. Well, let's say that I was in a cast and now my elbow is really stiff that way. Well, I could either pull my arm straight to try to get my bicep to loosen, or I can do tricep exercises. In your tricep, it actually is stiffening the rubber band on the backside because it was too loose, because it's been in this kind of locked position. And now my bicep is going to be looser. My elbow is going to be looser because I'm starting to equal the stiffness on the backside rather than the front side. So if you do that over and over again, then the fruits of your labor will stick better, And so when we take this to like a warm-up arena for practice or competition, we want to turn on those muscles and get them ready to fire in that twitchy way, in that, robust way that we're used to. So, volleyball, I'm going to be making, doing karaoke, side shuffling, jumping up and down, jumping forward, jumping sideways. Maybe as a coach, I'll have the kids in front of me, and then I'll have them like react. I'll point a finger, and then they have to like make a move, or they have to go down to one knee, so they're getting all those muscles to fire. And then we could even have them go to one knee and then stand back up again. So you're priming those muscles and getting them used to being turned on in the same way that you're going to compete. Because again, people talk about stretching to get it to kind of smooth out. Well, if you're having that sensation that you're feeling just kind of stiff, you feel like maybe like your heart's warmed up, like your heart rate's up, you're sweating a little bit, but you're feeling stiff. Well, then maybe we need to do more foam rolling, or use the percussion gun to kind of smooth out those spots. Things that typically you see when people are warming up, like skips and karaoke, like I just said, shuffles, butt kicks, high knees, sprint starts, get in your stance and, burst off the line 5 yards. Those things are getting those muscles activated and ready, and your nervous system ready, primed to be able to fire. So those of us who have like mowed the lawn with a pull start push mower, sometimes there's that little bulb thing that you have to push in. Well, what that's doing is pushing gasoline into the engine so that there's already some in there. So as soon as you then pull start it, it already has the thing that's needed to get it to run. And so that's what we call postsynaptic activation, or post-activation sometimes, is that by repeating the motions that are going to be done for the sport, what you're doing is you're getting the brain and the nervous system ready to fire as robustly as possible as soon as you ask them to do it. And so that's where a lot of, where you see a lot of like pro athletes, during pregame presentations and whatnot, like they have like rubber bands and they're pulling their legs from side to side, or, they're doing active drills where they have a athletic trainer or, one of the strength staff pushing against them and, trying to get all those muscles to fire, rather than just laying on the ground and stretching and doing that kind of stuff. So then you can really kind of see where muscles are firing, and then you can really kind of get yourself into that mind frame for what needs to turn on when it needs to turn on. And then, of course, as we'll talk about here in a second, the actual activities you do, either as a part of practice or a part of your competition, or before you start or after you do your organized activities, that's dependent on who you are, injury history, sport you play, so on and so forth. And so that's something that, I'm happy to answer any personal questions that our listeners and viewers might have.
Well, of course. And with that, Doctor, where can people who may be seeking out your types of services be able to find you or Advancing Athletics?
Thanks, Mitch. So you can reach me. My email is recover@advancingathletics.com. You can ask me personal questions on either X, Twitter, at Michele Ionno, MicheleIonno. My handle on Instagram is the same. And then you can follow or reach out to Advancing Athletics, my team and myself on Facebook or Instagram as well.
All right. And that is Dr. Michele Ionno of Advancing Athletics. Doc, thank you so much again this week.
Thanks, Mitch.
Vibe Auto Sales, located on West High Avenue in New Philadelphia and Cleveland Avenue in Canton, is a used car dealership committed to getting financing for everyone. We give every customer that walks in our showrooms a prime buying experience, no matter their credit score or financial situation. Current inventory can be viewed at www.wefinancenow.com. Check out our Facebook pages for the most up-to-date information about upcoming events and promotions happening at Vibe Auto Sales.
Are you trying to increase your speed, quickness, vertical leap, and agility? If so, NST Sports Performance is for you. NST trains athletes ages 5 through pro. NST designs each program specific to the athlete's needs, goals, and sports. For more, visit nstsports.com. Locations in North Canton and New Philadelphia. It's nstsports.com.
If you're looking for a new or pre-owned car or truck, why not see the Parkway Auto Group? Parkway is a special group of automotive experts with 8 brands to satisfy your needs. Come see the difference at the Parkway Auto Group on Commercial Parkway in Dover. 8 brands and 1 family. It's Parkway Auto Group.
The Furby Electric Supply Company has bright ideas for your home. Save money by converting to energy-efficient electrical products or add ambiance with beautiful lighting features. It begins with a professional consultation and a visit to the Furby Lighting Showroom. Then certified Furby contractors complete your project right and on time. Since 1934, 4 generations have built a reputation of quality and trust, and they offer emergency services too. Just visit Furby.com. That's F-U-R-B-A-Y. The Furby Electric Supply Company.
It takes a lot of practice to have a winning team. Albin Title has over 100 years of combined experience handling real estate, title, and escrow transactions. They serve Tuscarawas, Stark, Carroll, Harrison counties, and more. So choose Albin Title for your next home refinance, sale, or purchase. They'll get it done quickly and professionally. Contact Albin Title at 330-334-5800 or visit their website albintitle.com. Let them put their experience to work for you.
We all have 206 things in common. Our bones keep us up and moving. And we at Cleveland Clinic Union Hospital care about every single one of them. From the tip of your finger to a brand new hip, our orthopedic experts will keep you going while keeping you safe. For every break and breakthrough, for every bone and joint, for every care in the world. Get the care you need when and where you need it. Visit unionhospital.org.
Fall is in the air and part-time career enhancement courses at Buckeye Career Center are on the horizon. Registration is now open for Introduction to Beekeeping, Basic Small Engine Repair, and Sign Language. These part-time offerings run on Tuesday evenings and begin in November. Let Buckeye Career Center help you learn a new skill or advance your current skill set. Call 330-339-2288 for more information or to reserve your seat in one of these or our other part-time classes.
Have you checked in on someone yet today? This is your reminder. A simple text, call, or message. You don't have to be a professional to check in. You just have to ask and listen. Are you someone who could use a check-in? Dial 988, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. A message from Stark County Mental Health and Addiction Recovery. So this came up from a part, it was a Pro Football Talk article that was written originally in July. It was a July 25th article from Mike Florio that I made sure to look up. And maybe the article has been updated by this point. I don't know for sure. If somebody knows that, please let us know. But he wrote that per multiple sources, the representatives of Caleb Williams had been making it known to prospective agents that Williams wants partial ownership of the team that picks him in 2024 if he declares for the draft. Now, it's also written in here, likewise, a league source tells PFT that Jets quarterback Aaron Rodgers attempted to secure equity in his contract discussions with the Jets. The Jets never had to say no because the league did it for the Jets and every other team last week. I mean, this seems like more of a... I don't think there aren't going to be a lot of teams, if any teams, that are going to be willing to do something like this for a rookie who I understand he's a very highly touted rookie, a prospect. I understand he won the Heisman last year, was considered a Heisman favorite going into this year, and now it's probably not going to be the case. But like, why would you just like? I understand you want to make business moves, but is this kind of just like a short-sighted like demand for an up and coming prospect, or is this a play to like get teams that wouldn't be able to do this out of the market and then have a but why would a better team be willing to do something like this? If that's the case.
I think there are teams that would do it. There are teams that wouldn't do it. And I don't want to say what team is which. I don't know. I mean, hell, the Browns traded for a quarterback and gave him the most guaranteed money in NFL history.
Right.
At the time.
But they're not giving him 1% ownership.
Right. But at the same time, what would 1% ownership do? You know what I mean? You're not going to get a huge say.
It would be more money long term because you could build up
and
stock.
that's why I think that the right team would have to do it. The Chicago Bears to me is not a team that would do that, right? We know what they are. I can't believe I'm going to say this.
What are you going to say?
Would a team that thinks they're starving for a quarterback, but they're not, like the New England Patriots do it though?
Huh.
They just think, oh my God, we've been starving. Like, shut up.
Well,
just shut up. Okay? Welcome to our life. Welcome to our life, our entire lifetime, outside 3 years.
I'm not gonna get angry at them. It's like a rich person losing all their money in the stock market, and they have to now shop at Walmart. That's what we're saying.
Or they put it on a 17-leg parlay and it didn't hit. That's neither here nor there. You know, sports betting is kind of like stock market.
Yeah, it's both. They're both stupid to get into.
1-800-GAMBLER if you have a problem. But I can see the Patriots doing it, right? The Patriots to me look lost. They don't know what's. Mac Jones is terrible. He is, and I thought, although I didn't want to think, but I did think that maybe there was a chance he'd look better this year with Bill O'Brien there now as offensive coordinator. Second year with him, or was it first year with him? But
I can't believe you just said that sentence.
But he was at Alabama.
I know.
That's why I'm saying.
I know.
I didn't say general manager because we know he had.
You know who else was at Alabama? Devonta Smith and a whole bunch of weapons at Alabama.
Agree.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
You'd think the offensive coordinator would know where to put the quarterback in to have the most success as possible.
Sure.
Which has not happened because I don't think Mac Jones is good. But they just got beat by the guy that backed up Tom Brady for most of his career.
Brian Hoyer won a football game in 2023.
People probably didn't even realize Brian Hoyer was still playing.
I didn't.
No, I did. Because I miss him because he got a raw deal in Cleveland. That's neither here nor there. I just, it wouldn't be the Jets because the Jets have Aaron Rodgers under contract for another year. Now, if Aaron Rodgers retired, which does not seem like that's going to happen, I could see the Patriots being a team like that. It wouldn't be the Raiders if they went down that hole and tried to tank. It's, not going to be the Giants because they just signed Daniel Jones to that wonderful contract that he's getting paid for now. I wonder if this is coming out because they're trying to scare teams away. Because they've already threatened, too, if they don't like the spot, then maybe he goes back to college for another year.
Yeah, this is the thing, too. Like, number one, Caleb Williams just had arguably the worst college football game of his career against Notre Dame in that loss.
It was bad.
It was bad. 3 interceptions in the first half. That guy has pretty much forfeited any sort of demand like this that you would have for an NFL franchise. Number two, I feel like we're getting towards a way and look, prospects are going to be hyped up forever and ever as long as the NFL draft is still a thing because, there are certain guys who are more ready than others and who can flourish at the NFL level. But we've seen a number of these quarterbacks go through, and a lot of these guys have been able to live up to the hype despite everything. But there are so many quarterbacks who have been kind of hyped up as like the next big thing for so many years. I mean, guys like Trevor Lawrence and, guys like it really started in like the early 2010s with like the Andrew Luck and Robert Griffin III thing. And you could say those guys kind of lived up to what they were able to do, whether it was in the short term or the long term. But we've hyped up guys like Trevor Lawrence and Kyler Murray and even Deshaun Watson, if you want to get technical. I'm not just naming number one picks here, but have we really seen enough of Caleb Williams to like make sure this guy is a bona fide, guaranteed, will succeed at any team in the NFL that you will give him? We haven't. So
it's a risk.
It is. I understand every draft pick is a risk. I get that, but there are some that are more than others.
Yeah.
And when you have this number one option, you have to make sure you land it right because that could be a franchise changer. we don't know if Caleb Williams is a franchise changer. I think he can be a good NFL quarterback. He's got the tangibles to do so. But this is my thing. I just don't see this guy as someone who should be making these sort of, again, these are reported claims to these teams being like, if you're going to draft me, I want a slice of the pie. It's like the NFL owners, not me, the NFL owners are going to look at that and be like, who are you to tell us what to do right now? We are giving you the keys. You don't have the keys and the car. We are giving you the keys to this. Don't crash the car, basically.
Yeah. And what happens if he is a bust and you gave him
That's what I'm
ownership?
saying.
I mean, then you are in.
That's one of the dumbest moves that any owner. Yeah, that would be even worse. That might even be worse than giving a quarterback a $233 million guaranteed contract. No, even if Watson had played like his Texan self right out of the gate, that'd be really dumb.
I agree with you. I think at the same time when Watson was signed, the extension, aka new deal with Cleveland, it was, oh my gosh, look at this, because of what happened off the field, allegedly,
and that was the only way we could get him,
right? And because of the long-term layoff he had, but you knew that wasn't going to be the highest paid quarterback of all time because other quarterbacks are going to get paid that are going to be better than Deshaun Watson, right? There's nobody in here that's going to say that if Deshaun Watson was his Houston Texans self right now in Cleveland, that he's better than Pat Mahomes. Like, it's Mahomes, I think, is the best quarterback in football. I don't really think you can argue it. You're not talking about a guy that's just going to be getting paid millions and millions of dollars. You're talking about a guy that's going to have long-term money from your franchise forever.
Yeah.
And that is altering. And I don't know. Is it him or is it his dad? His dad's been doing a lot of talking too. And that's the hard part.
I think I said this on the podcast already. Can we stop, I'm not saying we should stop the practice of this happening, but can we stop overhyping the parent agents of these guys? Like, there are so many parents now, and give credit to these parents who are active in their, sons or daughters' lives and trying to make sure they get the best for their kids. But can we just stop making it to be like, so-and-so's dad blasts NFL owner for comments made about this? And I'm like, can we just stop with it? Just stop with it. I'm so annoyed by it. But that's only me. I'd also have to look up and see, by the way, if an NFL player can have ownership of a team.
We don't know.
Because I just learned the story of, I knew who, who was the Mario Lemieux. Mario Lemieux, the Hall of Fame hockey player for the Penguins. He was a player for the Penguins, then he retired, and then he unretired, and then he actually bought the then bankrupt Penguins from their previous owner and was a player for years with them as the owner of the team. He eventually sold off his stake, but he's still, I think, part of the front office or executives. But I always wondered about that. Like, the NHL allows that to happen, and I'm like, I wonder if that could be in other leagues as well. I know you can't manage a team while you're an owner, because Ted Turner tried to do that for one game in the 70s with the Braves, and that didn't. And then the league office was like, no, you can't do that, and then he had to resign. I don't know. I'd have to look that up. But we don't have enough time to do that now. We got to move on to something else here. Game 3 went exactly as I thought it would last night. The Astros proving that they're better on the road than they are at home for some reason. I mean, that game, the Rangers didn't completely collapse. I'll give them that. They had some moments in there that you could take away from that game, but it's a series again. The Rangers are going to have to play well in Game 4 in order to have the real advantage against Houston going into Game 5. Max Scherzer I hate to say it, looked like postseason Max Scherzer. That guy has really struggled at times in the playoffs. Even when the Nationals won the World Series, he struggled.
You started a guy who hadn't pitched since September.
Yeah.
Mid-September, who got hurt. And he's also old. I think people have this... I remember still talking about this with you before the season started. Mm-hmm. People had this almost fantasy that Verlander and Scherzer in New York, they're not in their prime anymore. They've been pitching well past their prime at a high level, but it catches up to you at some point.
Didn't Verlander win the Cy Young a few years ago, though?
Yeah.
Yeah, so...
But I'm saying, it's going to eventually catch up.
Okay, yeah, I mean, no, yeah, I think they're at the tail ends of their...
Yeah, exactly.
Their thing,
but I think people just think, Scherzer's on the mound. It's the 3-time Cy Young Award winner Max Scherzer. He's going to do this, and it's like,
Yeah.
I don't know. And he did not pitch well last night.
No, he did
and
not.
The Astros feasted on him.
Much like the Rangers did in the first 2 games. They jumped on him early, and then they couldn't recover.
Yeah.
You know, it was just an unfortunate circumstance for Texas. Game 3 is tonight in the other series. That one's, I already said in the previous episode, that's a wash. And give credit to Arizona for getting here. And I part of me hopes they come back and make it a series just to make it competitive and see if they can turn the baseball world on its head. Because the last thing I think baseball wants is a Texas versus Arizona World Series. But I don't know. Phillies are just that team right now. It's. We were watching that thing today of who was DeAndre Swift and who was the other guy?
Terrell Edmonds.
Terrell Edmonds, the players for the Eagles, at the Phillies game 2. And they had that funny commentary back and forth. It reminded me of the Astros. Was it Astros? It had to have been. Where Russell Westbrook and James Harden, when they were on the Rockets, were like at the game. And there was that one pitch where they had to like lean out of the way, even though they were nowhere close to it. That was funny. But yeah, that's kind of where we are with the baseball playoffs. I mean,
I don't see how the Phillies and Diamondbacks goes past 5 games. I think maybe Arizona's able to squeak one in Arizona.
Yeah, maybe.
I also think that I could see Philly sweeping this in 4.
Maybe.
And if you're Philly, that's the goal. Obviously, if you go back home for Game 5, this is.
Let me ask you. We talked about this on the Tuesday episode, but somebody was saying if Bryce Harper wins a World Series for Philadelphia, it automatically makes him the greatest Philly of all time. I think that's nuts because Bryce Harper is only into year 5 of his run in Philadelphia, which I couldn't believe at the time. He signed that contract way back in early 2019. But does a World Series victory for this year's Phillies team put Bryce Harper on the Mount Rushmore of Philadelphia Phillies?
If he keeps playing the way he is, yes.
And that's interesting to me because in year 5 of your tenure with Philadelphia, you already spent half of your career with one team in Washington. You're going to spend the second half of your career in Philly. I mean, I don't know if he's going to play all 12 years of his contract like it was written down, but I mean, who plays the entirety of their contract at a competitive level, I should say.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to think of all the Philly players that, and I know we're an Ohio-based podcast, but we try to talk about other teams as well. We're trying to think of like the best Phillies of all time. I mean, Mike Schmidt's right on top of the mountain. We all know this. Mike Schmidt's number 1. You could maybe even put in somebody like Steve Carlton around there as well, although Steve Carlton bounced around from team to team. You could even put some of the modern Phillies in there. I mean, what stinks about Ryan Howard and Chase Utley is that those guys were the face of the Phillies for years, and I don't know if either of them are going to make the Hall of Fame because injuries and age kind of caught up to them a little earlier than expected, but those guys were, when you thought about the Phillies in the late 2000s, early 2010s, those were the two that you had on the front of your posters and all. You could even throw in the late Roy Halladay. Roy Halladay was he on the World Series team in 2008? I feel like he was. Or I might be lying.
I think he was.
Was that right after he got traded from Toronto? I mean, he's, again, one of the 2 guys who have thrown a no-hitter in the postseason, which we never thought that would ever be done again. Then he did it. You could also, I'm trying to think of other guys. Well, you could even go back into the earlier stages of baseball, and I'm really struggling off the top of my head to pick up names from Phillies catalog of players. The only one that's coming to mind right now is like Richie Ashburn, and I know that's probably not the Mount Rushmore level. I mean, I don't know if you pulled up anything.
No, I haven't pulled up anything. I'm just trying to think.
Something.
I think in terms of the recent Phillies, I think Jimmy Rollins could be in there still too.
Yeah,
he had a very long tenure in Philly before he ended up going to the Dodgers and the White Sox.
Best Phillies players. That said best Phillies players. Okay. The greatest Phillies of all time. This is from Clutch Points. Owen Christofoli wrote this. First of all, this was written when? This is written in 2023. Okay, so there you go. Number 10, he put Bobby Abreu.
That's a fair one.
I just played MLB 2K6 again yesterday. By the way, I got this thing on Amazon. You can plug it into your PlayStation 2, and you can use a PlayStation 5 controller on your PS2. Look up Retro Receiver on Amazon. I'm not kidding. You have a PS5 right there. Well, I was gonna say you have to have an old gaming system, but I have my PS2 with me, and I can use my modern PS5 controller on it. It's so cool. Anyway, Bobby Abreu is legit because I played the Dodgers against the Phillies yesterday, and Bobby Abreu hit 2 home runs off of me. It was a whole thing. Jimmy Rollins is number 9. Sherry McGee is number 8. This is a guy, like, turn of the 20th century player for the Phillies. Won a batting title, put a number of good years together. Richie Ashburn, number 7, so I wasn't that far off. He is in the Hall of Fame. He's also known for the end of his tenure with the Mets. Big Ed Delahanty, and the reason I know about this guy is because I think he's the guy that got drunk on a train to another game one day, and then like got on the train tracks and then fell into Niagara Falls, and that's how he died. And I read that in the baseball book, and I was like, well. Number 5, Pete Alexander. I think, was he brothers of Grover Cleveland Alexander? I know Grover Cleveland played for the Cardinals. Grover Cleveland Alexander played for the Cardinals. Grover Cleveland was the 24th and 26th president of the United States. Okay, here we go. Number 4, Chase Utley. Again, this guy, I really thought he played his entire career. I just remembered he played for the Dodgers as well, along with Jimmy Rollins. There are so few guys that play for one team anymore. It really is just that's the way it is now. I mean, any team is willing to take it on. It's not like it was back then. I sound like I'm 90 years old. Steve Carlton's number 3. Makes sense to me. That guy won 4 Cy Young awards. That man was insane. Number 2, this is the one I was thinking of. Robin Roberts. This guy was a Hall of Famer, 7-time All-Star. I think he had like a 78-pitch no-hitter one time in his career, which is insane now. And then Mike Schmidt's number 1. So it's probably going to be Mike Schmidt, Robin Roberts, because those guys have the advantage of playing for their entire careers with Philly. Steve Carlton, and then unfortunately for Ryan Howard and Chase Utley, I think you have to go. You probably have to go Bryce, because also he's going to have the remaining 7 years with Philly, so he's going to be able to build a lasting legacy there. He'll probably get to 3,000 hits there. He'll probably do whatever he has to do. I don't know, man. It's really fascinating. And they were bringing up the other day that somebody brought up his Sports Illustrated cover from 2009. I remember holding that issue in my hand, and it was like 570-foot home runs, 16 years old, and like 95 miles an hour. And I was like, who the hell is this guy? And then lo and behold, he became arguably one of the top baseball players of his era. So it's amazing how he's been able to live up to the expectations that were placed on him at 16 years old.
Not only maybe 3,000 hits, Mitch, but maybe 500 home runs. He's at 306 career home runs.
Okay.
So he's 7 years left. He's going to need 294 more home runs.
Yeah, so that's around 40 a season.
42 a season. So it's going to be tough,
Yeah.
but we know he's fully capable of going on
Sure.
a tear like that. I mean, look
Sure.
at the tear he's on right now in the postseason.
Yeah.
It's going to have to be multiple World Series for him to be considered
Okay.
one of the greatest Phillies of all time. If not, I mean, people want to say the greatest, but I think it's prisoner of the moment type talk.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
I agree with that.
At the same time, you look at the moments he's provided. And I think that's what people like to talk about. The home run last year, the fact that he's hitting home runs this year in big games. Hits a home run on his birthday and blows out the number 3-1 as he crosses home plate because it was his 31st birthday. That's the other thing, too, is 7 more years, you're talking he's going to be 38, 39. Like, there's a good chance he ends his career in Philadelphia.
Yeah, it's almost certain.
It's hard to believe that unless they trade him. I don't see him playing 7 years, though, and then latching on somewhere.
Unless ownership takes a turn and is like, they're not caring anymore, this team's really bad. I can't imagine that now, but anything could happen in time. I'm with you, though. I think it's going to take multiple titles for them to get. I take back what I said. It's going to take at least 1 World Series for him to be among
I think
the
it's going to take
great
2 World
Phillies.
Series wins, and then
Yes.
in the next 7 years after this season, probably at least 5 more.
Because I believe every one of them, except for Roberts, won a title. Like Chase Utley won the title. Steve Carlton won the title. Some Philly fans, I mean, I don't know how many Philly fans, but a lot of Philly fans will reference Tug McGraw as one of the great ones because he closed out that World Series against Kansas City, and then Schmidt won it with the Phillies in '80. So it's kind of like that's your badge of honor that you have to get for Philly, which is, I mean, they only won the World Series twice, but it's kind of like with Cleveland. If you were on those World Series teams, you will always be remembered. Now, granted, most of the Indians World Series winners are not with us anymore, but that's neither here nor there. There's always next year.
Have you checked in on someone yet today? This is your reminder. A simple text, call, or message. You don't have to be a professional to check in. You just have to ask and listen. Are you someone who could use a check-in? Dial 988 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. A message from Stark County Mental Health and Addiction Recovery.
Wendy's without the Wendy's app is like Nugs without the sauce. Or a Frosty without the fries.
US, Alaska, and Canada.
You deserve the best. And at Ferris Chevrolet, Buick, Cadillac, Toyota, that's what you get. We consider you, the customer, to be part of our family. Anybody can make promises, but when you visit Ferris, you get the Ferris deal from a Ferris wheel. So if you're looking for a car, truck, or van, think Ferris.
Think Ferris. Where you matter.
You matter. Everyone plays a part. We all have a role. Each of us can make a difference. You do matter, and the best way to have a positive impact is to pay it forward. With each of us helping one another to cope, feel better, and know that we belong. Pass on the positivity today. Tell someone else they matter too. Alt Care.
Alt Care, Alt Care. Where you matter.
You invest a lot in your home and vehicle purchases. Van Nostrand Young and Associates want you to feel secure should anything happen to those investments. We partnered with providers like Grange Insurance and other industry leaders to be sure you're presented with the most complete coverage to fit your needs. Because we're not only here to protect the items you invest in, we're here to protect your future as well.
Call Van Nostrand Young Insurance in North Canton at 330-497-1867.
Happy Sardiversary with Sarda rider Anthony. We're celebrating 25 years with our valued riders.
And I absolutely enjoy riding the buses. I get to know a few of the drivers, very respectful, very professional. Just an all-around about good experience. It helps people get to where they're going, disabled, veterans, or people going to work.
Thanks to all our riders as we celebrate Sarda 25 at Sarda.
You need to remodel your bath? You need JR Bath Company. Trust in the quality of JR Bath. It's fast, it's safe, and it's affordable. Call today at 1-800-664-2284 or go to jrbath.com.
Finally, you mentioned college stuff. I mean, the big game we have this week is Ohio State against Penn State. The fact that it's a day game is ridiculous, especially with the night game next week against Wisconsin. But this is going to be a tough one. Penn State and Ohio State both in the top 10. The first time they'll match up in the top 10 since was that 2018 game where they ran that halfback handoff on 4th and 5. Like, that threw me for a freaking loop. But I don't know. If Penn State gets this victory, it automatically puts them in contention for the playoff because, they're going to match against Michigan here in a couple weeks. I don't really know what to expect from this matchup. Ohio State has looked better. I think they still are a dominant defense, but they just can't get off to a slow start.
I'm very intrigued to see how this is going to go. Ohio State obviously is going to be favored at home. I think regardless if it's a noon or night game, the crowd will be locked in.
Yeah.
They're trying to scarlet the shoe. I saw something, the gates are opening 2 hours earlier than usual because they want this stadium to be packed.
Sure.
And it should be. James Franklin, I believe, has only beaten Ohio State one time in his career. And it was at Penn State in a night game, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe. Was that the blocked kick one?
Yes,
Yeah,
I think it was the block kicked one. Mm-hmm. This is also where my fun fact of the day is going to come in, Mitch.
Oh, shoot. Did I spoil it for you?
No.
Oh, good. Sorry.
I think you did.
Okay, good.
So your fun fact of the day is, with this game, the highest rated quarterback prospect from Pennsylvania in the last 15 plus years will lead Ohio State against the highest rated quarterback from Ohio in the modern recruiting era.
Come on.
For Penn State. So you have somebody from Pennsylvania playing for Ohio State against somebody from Ohio playing for Penn State in Drew Allard. and obviously in Kyle McCord, the
Yeah.
quarterback here. This should be very interesting. I could see this being a close, high-scoring game. I could see this being a 24-21 type slugfest game. Ohio State's defense, I think, has been the most consistent part of this team so far this year. The offense, at times, we've been worried. What is it? The play calls, decision-making, whatever it is. They've still found a way to win. And all that matters is winning. And it doesn't matter how ugly this win is this week. This is a top 10 game in the country. They will have another one unless Michigan slips up or Ohio State slips up. You win those two and you take care of business the rest of the way, you're going to be fine. Luckily, they didn't get trapped last week playing against Purdue. And obviously, Penn State was not fooled one bit playing against UMass. I do think Ohio State wins this game. I'm not sold on Penn State, and I'm not sold on James Franklin. I won't be shocked, though, if this is a close game and it doesn't go the way, because we've seen our guys in one big game on the road, which gives me confidence they should be able to win at home.
Sure.
But we've also seen times at home where the team isn't ready.
Right.
I mean, both under Urban Meyer, Jim Tressel, and Ryan Day as well. When you look back to that Oregon game a couple of years ago, this is going to be a good game. There's good games on the rest of the day too, right? I mean, Alabama and Tennessee, it's going to be a good one.
Yeah.
And you have Utah, USC at night, and you also have Duke at Florida State. I mean, you're talking about 4 top 25 ranked matchups this week. Number of other teams at top 25, I think, have tough opponents, but this is the marquee game of the week. It's a shame it is at noon at the same time, though. I'll never be upset because it means we get Gus Johnson and Joel Klatt.
That's fair.
I love.
Who doesn't? I don't want to meet the person who doesn't like them together.
Yeah, if you don't
Jenny
like
Taft on the sideline.
Yeah. It's a great atmosphere. Urban Meyer before the game on the Big Noon Kickoff show. And we saw him, what was it, against Maryland?
Yes.
When the Big Noon Kickoff was there. He still looked like that guy that was a coach for Ohio State in the sideline when Ohio State did not start off hot. So you'd have to think that Ohio State should be able to get it done.
He also disputed any rumors of him coming back to coaching with that Michigan State. Yeah. That team is on a downward spiral, isn't it? That's such a fascinating fall. And with all to be serious for a second, with all the stuff that's been going on at that school, allegedly, that's just a rough go of it for the last couple of years. By the way, did you mention Kyle McCord is from Pennsylvania? Did he go to school in Pennsylvania?
It has to be if he's one of the top.
Because it says he's from New Jersey.
He must have went to school in Pennsylvania.
Okay, because that's totally fair, because Pennsylvania and Jersey are pretty close to one another. All right, that's pretty much all the time we have here. Thank you so much for listening or watching to the Big Time Sports Podcast Show.
Go Bears.